Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
Man on a mission. The agony and ecstasy of a life in football is an eye-opening, behind-the-scenes account of English football's inner workings and Ipswich Town in the 80s, 90s and 2000s, told by former Ipswich and Football League chairman David Sheepshanks. I'm delighted to say that David joins me live on the line from the dugout now. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning, Giles.
Good to have you with us. Why did you think the time was right? You know, on the day that the England team fly out for glory, of course, for the World Cup. Why did you think the time was right to put this all down on paper? What was the spur?
Well, absolutely. I can't let you say that the team flying out. And of course, in my book, I boldly predict that this is the year that we'll win the World Cup. But because, of course, my last big job was doing St George's Park. And when we built it and finished it, Greg Dyke famously said that he thought we'd win in 2022. And I said, no, I think it's 2026. Anyway, there we go. Who knows? Well, the truth be known, it's a great question. The truth be known, I started writing this book, and here it is, by the way. I'll just show you.
It's a very handsome. That's a very handsome photograph on the front, by the way.
I don't know about that. It was professionally done and tarted up. I started writing that book 7 years ago, in 2019, and I mean, my motivation was only because loads of people kept saying, David, when are you going to write a book? When are you going to write a book? And I can't think who's interested, really. But I guess the starting point is that I'm the local man, local boy who fell in love with his club and ended up getting the chance and the honour of running it. And, you know, how many can say that? It's a boyhood, girlhood dream for every football fan. And I'm one of the lucky ones who did. So that was really the beginning. And I've had such a sort of crazy life and done all sorts of things in all sorts of places. But I've been terribly fortunate and privileged, and I thought I'd try and write the story. Anyway, so here it is, and it's quite long, and it's got all sorts of stuff in it. Obviously, people in this area, I'm a Suffolk boy, as they say, know me as Ipswich Town, and I guess people in England know me because I did it for 14 years. And I was just thinking, I've been, it's next year I will have been in football for 40 years. So I was first made a director in the mid-80s at Ipswich in February 87. And I've had a wonderful experience, really, meeting all sorts of amazing people.
So did the career sort of, you were in business first and then went into, you were invited to go onto the board? I mean, what was the business career, and did you always keep your eye on what Ipswich Town were doing, sort of thing?
Oh, certainly that, because I was a fan. I mean, I suppose relatively late to it. My first game was April 66. And just after Alf Ramsey had gone and Jackie Milburn had gone and Bill McGarry had become our manager. And, you know, but like every boy or girl who goes to the game, your first game, it only takes one game to get hooked. And I went with some people who worked for us on the farm here. And I mean, it was only, you know, it's all it took, one game. We won 3-2 against Leyton Orient in the old second division. And Ray Crawford and Jerry Baker scored, and for your elder listeners, and you know, I was totally hooked. You get the sort of thrill of being in the crowd and seeing, you know, new heroes that hadn't really had time to become heroes at that point, and then you're in. And I remember that all my life. And eventually, I became a director, and then took over as chairman, running the club, and, you know, the importance of bringing and making it accessible for young people and families, and, you know, trying to have joined up thinking. So you have ticket pricing that attracts people to come in for very little. In those days, we did kids for £1. And, you know, so, I am a football fan at heart, but I did have a business background. I started in the food business. I started as a motorcycle messenger, and in London. And when I was my father said, "Go and get yourself sorted out," and I was a long-haired young bum. And so I did. And then I found my way into work in the food industry and ended up running my own prawn company called Starfish. We bought and sold prawns from Iceland and Norway and packed them for Marks and Spencer's and B-Jam and all sorts of people. And then I made lots of successes, but also mistakes with that, and eventually sold the majority of the company. But then it was like selling your baby, and started again and determined that I was never going to make those mistakes again. Started again with Suffolk Foods with my younger brother Rick, who now has Stokes Sauces, and Rick and I started up Suffolk Foods making mayonnaise. I did the sales and the finance, and Rick did the production and the logistics, and we made a decent fist of that. And in the middle of doing all that, I suddenly got asked if I would be a director of the club, which is another story. I'll tell you in a minute if you want to know, but it was funny. And that really wrote the beginnings of what was going to be my football life.
I mean, did somebody sort of sidle up to you in the car park and say, how to get mayonnaise out there? I think you'd be a perfect fit for it, because with the greatest of respects, the food production and football, not natural bedfellows. So what? I mean, obviously it's the dream ask, but then again, it's the harsh reality, David. Somewhat different to what perhaps you thought, or can you apply the lessons to both? Because football is two things. Football is a job like no other. And Ipswich Town, because you said, is a team like no other, because yes, there's a town of Ipswich, but you mentioned the farm. I mean, the ambience of this particular club is somewhat different from shall we say, a gritty northern industrial heartland.
Well, it is and it isn't. I think because of the great Alf Ramsey and Bobby Robson, I mean, the only club to have two football nights in that sense managing it. I mean, because of their legacy, the club has got a fan base all over the world, and much bigger than we might otherwise have, because we are, you're right, we're Ipswich in little old Suffolk, but we've got a fan base all over the world, all over this country. You see us these days, and it was the same in my day. We regularly pack out the away end at away games, regularly have 3,000 fans travelling to support us wherever we are. And they are amazing, the supporters of this club. So it has got a football tradition, I think, I would say. But I mean, go back to your question. I mean, mayonnaise and football. I mean, I'm it's called man on a mission, because I guess I've been a driven man. I'm always, workaholic. My father was a tremendous role model for me, and taught me you get nothing unless you reap what you sow, and you've got to get out there and do it. So I was a man on a mission building my businesses, and I was a man on a mission doing Ipswich when I got eventually appointed, and I've been on a mission at St George's Park and other things I've done since. So it's sort of an indication of being driven. And you say, what's it got in common? Well, basically, by the time I was made chairman of Ipswich in 95, that was sort of the end of the amateur era. I mean, nothing is black or white, it's all shades of grey. But the Premier League had been founded 3 years ago, and we were really left behind. We'd been beaten 95, spring 95, by Manchester United 9-0. I was there. But I always have to level it up by telling people I was there in 1980 when we beat Manchester United 6-0 and missed 2 penalties. But the thing was, it was bringing some business brains. I'm not saying I'm a business guru, but bringing some business brains to the running of a football club, because in those days we didn't, we had a tiny ticket office underneath the reception, and we had a small, very good but commercial office and lottery business, whatever it was, but it was tiny in comparison. And the game was rapidly changing. The big money was coming in, and we had to, we had to evolve very quickly. And so that was really my thing, was to try and professionalize the club, bring it together. The players and the on-field staff and the off-field staff were always very separate. It was a bit we and they. How do we become we? One team, one dream, all that kind of stuff, molding, bringing people together, identifying the vision, which I went with a 5-year plan to get promoted. And I remember telling, sitting around the table with George Burley and others and saying, do you think we can be promoted next year? And they all looked at me, who's this idiot? Who's this joker? And, I said, what about 2 years? And they said, shaking heads. And I said, what about 5 years? And then a few heads came up and said, well, I think 5 years we could. And it was actually a deliberate ploy on my part to try and engage them behind something that they believed in could be their plan. Because it doesn't work if I say it's my plan and then, because it's then, well, it's his. It's got to be our plan, and we all have to sign up to it and agree what we're going to do. So that was the key thing: get a vision that everybody could share behind and work behind, and pull the club together. So we did, and we had 4 years of nearly misses. And, playoffs every year, and people said, oh, David, you're the bridesmaids, microphone under my David. So what are you going to do now? You've just lost in the playoffs again. You're going to have to sell your best players, aren't you? This is the end of the dream. Are you going to level with the supporters now and tell them how it is? And if I wavered for a second, that would have been it. You've got to somehow learn to say, no, look, I'm hurting as much as you are. We're all hurting. This is a really bad day. We're going to go home and, drown our sorrows or whatever we're going to do. But tomorrow's a new day. The sun will come up and we will go again, and we will learn from this, and we will find new ways, and we'll find new gems of young players in different clubs, either in our club to bring through or other clubs to sign. And we will come again. And we did actually every year. And then in the 5th year, gloriously, we won at Wembley in 2000. And playoffs are hell, but if there's one way to go get promoted, it's at Wembley, and it was glorious.
And I mean, how? Because we currently live, in a world where there's sort of huge money going into football, even more so, and there are chairmen and owners of football clubs who there's a disconnect between them and the fans. And as I said, Ipswich has always been different. It's always been a community club, and you've had managers, Bobby Robertson, etc., who are incredibly likable people. Did you always have that idea of we are Ipswich, therefore we are a different kind of club, we are a community? You mentioned kids for a quid, which now that's the sort of thing that new owners would. This is like before we had families coming into football, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, no, I mean, I think I wouldn't want to put us on a pedestal. There were other, very well-run clubs by people who loved them as well. But, I mean, it is a new era today. And, actually, part of the story is that later on, 2008, we sold the club to Marcus Evans, and that was very reluctant because we'd been relegated after these glorious years and getting into Europe and beating Inter Milan and all that sort of stuff. Wonderful things, wonderful parts, happy parts of the book. But then we had our nadir, and it was awful. We were relegated into financial oblivion, and the penalty was ludicrously harsh because we were relegated at the worst possible year when it was the August transfer deadline for the first time. And it was like sort of sinking in quicksand, really, and nothing we could do about it. And all 3 clubs ended up in the mire, who were relegated that year. And after that, the Premier League changed the rules for the parachutes. But nevertheless, today, if you compare it, Ipswich then, I mean, we paid the penalty for having a bad season on the field. Our second season in the Premier League, we just failed narrowly. But nevertheless, we paid the penalty. And 25 years on, my beloved club, now run by a brilliant team, a guy called Mark Ashton and Kieran McKenna, the manager, and they have a bunch of new American investors, very, very wealthy. And we were relegated from the Premier League a year ago. Now we've been promoted again. And this time around, it wasn't financial penury. I mean, of course, it was a big disappointment, and it was certainly not their plan. But actually, it was almost as though it was a minor inconvenience, because financially, they had the wealth to carry on investing and buying new players. And they've come again a year later, and the club is back promoted. So it's a different era. So it doesn't mean they don't love the club any less. Of course, they didn't the people who own it now didn't grow up loving the club as we did, as custodians and stewards in our day, but and in many, many other clubs. The vast majority of the people who run the clubs today are in the Premier League anyway, are major investors, and they buy into the dream and they love the club, and I'm sure they love the heritage, but it is a different era.
The other thing is, of course, that you go from Ipswich Town to the to be chairman of the Football League. Yes, I mean talk about big steps. I mean some will say, well, why on earth would you want to do that? Did you think I can make a difference here? I've got the skill set.
Well, no, it was quite by accident, really. It's quite a pertinent story today, because the division between the Premier League and the rest is still the chasm.
Yeah.
Financial gap is huge. And but in 1996, only 4 years after the Premier League was founded, the Football League board of the day called a meeting of the 72 clubs left in the Football League. And I was a newish, only 2 years in, chairman of one of them, of Ipswich. And they brought the Premier League along, and the FA actually, and each of them made a pitch to the Football League to run their broadcasting. The FA pitch didn't carry weight, but the Premier League pitch was, if you will back us, Football League, we will offer you 20% of the combined revenues, commercial TV revenues of the Premier League and the Football League, if you'll let us to do the deal for you. 71 out of 72 clubs put their hands up. Yes, please. We would, because look, this was huge. Anybody could see this was a chance to reconnect the Football League to the rocket ship that was becoming the Premier League. And anyway, 2 weeks later, I was standing in our club secretary's office, and it came up on CFAX, Sky do deal with Football League. And Sky, very cleverly, had kind of divided and ruled. The Football League TV deal at the time had been 9 million. Just think of that in this day and age.
Grief.
The billions. 9 million, okay, from ITV. I think it was roughly 9 million. Sky offered them 25 million. They thought, oh, my God, this is amazing. We've got to take it. And they were very distrustful of the Premier League, of course, in those days, many of the Football League people. And so they did take it against the wishes of the 71 clubs who'd voted to carry on. And I saw this and I went apeshit. Sorry, excuse me.
Quite all right. It's Monday. We're in Spain.
And many other people felt the same. And I rang up a few of the other chairmen, names of those days, many of them sadly not with us. Ron Nodes at Crystal Palace and Ian Stott at Oldham. And these were all great characters of the day. And said, come on, what are we going to, this is impossible. We can't let this happen. Anyway, they agreed. And I got all the championship, it wasn't called that then, but of the clubs of the day, to agree to pay 10 grand each to a fighting fund. I went to a law firm, top law firm in London, and said, can you help us? Have we got a case? They said, you've absolutely got a case. We called an extraordinary general meeting of the clubs, and it was very difficult because the people who were on the board of the day were very honest, well-meaning people trying to do the right thing, but out of touch, frankly, commercially. And I won't mention their names on the radio, but anyway,
sure.
they are in the book though. And so the meeting happened. And cut a long story short, there were two meetings, one after the other. The whole of the Football League board resigned, and then we all went back into our room. The championship clubs went back into our room, the other clubs in their room, divisional rooms, and said, we looked at it and said, well, what are we going to do now? We've won, but what are we going to do now? And nobody had really worked out what the plan was. And I thought, I was a new boy relatively, and I thought, I didn't know. I thought one of the senior people would take over, in the interim. Anyway, they all turned around and pointed at me, no, you've got to do it, David. And so I got made Muggins here, got suddenly thrust forward to say, you've led this. So, I mean, I'm not really a revolutionary. It's not in my DNA, But they said, well, you've led this, so you've got to take it on. So I was elected. I was appointed chairman of the league, and I was still the chairman of Ipswich. That's the last time it's ever happened. And God knows how we did anyway, but just you find reserves of energy, whatever. And they said, we'll give you, you've got 2 years. Your mandate is 2 years, 2 years to find a new chairman, independent chairman to succeed you. Most importantly, to find a new chief executive and to begin the process of modernisation. We were operating out of a rickety old head office in Lytham St Anne's that was a sort of, it was just not fit for purpose of the day. And there was lots of stuff to be done. So anyway, that's what happened. And I found, we found, I'm a wee man, but we found Richard Scudamore, who then went on to become a huge success with the Premier League. And he became our chief executive. And then he did so well, the Premier League nicked him, but he became our chief executive, and we made a good fist of it.
St George's Park, it's now ingrained in the setup, but at the time this was quite revolutionary. Where did this sort of, we call it the chispa, the spark, come from, David, to get that set up?
Well, I mean, that we had you're absolutely right. Every other major footballing nation in Europe had a national football centre of one sort or another. Germany actually had the sports university in Cologne, didn't have a centre, but they had the learning in place. And but Spain and Italy, France at Clairefontaine, and Holland and so forth, they all had their own centres. And we had tried to start ours, but when we'd been building Wembley, and I was by then an FA man, and we bought this land at now called St George's Park, but at Burton-upon-Trent, just outside in Staffordshire. A beautiful estate that belonged to the Bass family, the beer brewing family, 330 acres or something. And we bought it and then put the pitches in and then had to mothball it. And so it sat there because the FA basically ran out of money while we were, or nearly ran out of money, but had to be very careful with money when we were building Wembley. And it was only in 2007 that a meeting, so this has now been mothballed for 5 years, I think. And in 2007, there was a FA council meeting, the so-called Blazers, the old farts, whatever you want to call them. And I was one of them, or a young fart. But I was on the FA board. So I was, and there was a sort of rebellion from the council, from the floor. And they said, we've really got to do something and build a national centre. We're being left behind. And, which some of us agreed with, but that we were always in the minority on the board. But eventually, anyway, the vote happened and it got carried. And again, it's a bit like, I was already at the time chairman of something called FA Learning, which was the coach education side, but it didn't really have any clout, if I'm honest. But anyway, cut a long story short, it got carried. It was therefore going to have to be demothballed, and somehow I got appointed to be the new chairman. And I'm not sure everybody wanted it built, because some of the Premier League were very suspicious of the FA and wanted to keep the FA down. And but my mantra was, the Premier League clubs, and Ipswich had been one and wanted to be one again, absolutely have amazing academies and buildings, and even more amazing these days. You look at Man City and Arsenal and all these amazing setups that all the big clubs have now. And indeed, Ipswich have just built a massive new centre. But the point is, they're club centres, they're not the countries. And, football, the FA has a mantra, which is, football for all, FA for all,
Yeah.
and to be accessible. And so, it's not everybody. We all have a club or love a club, but England is England, and as we're about to enjoy in the World Cup, and it's for us, it's for the whole country. It unites the country, and we all get behind it. And so St George's Park, as we named it during the building, one of my colleagues, Bob Murray, brilliantly came up with the name, and is that. And it's a centre. As I kept saying to people, places don't win anything. but environments, can be the catalyst to winning. And Sir Gareth Southgate, was one of the early adopters, bought into it completely, was a massive support to me and all of us, doing this at the time. So we have a place that brings people together. The idea was it should be accessible and aspirational, where people want to come because they're going to learn something and where they enjoy learning. And, if we buy into a culture of every day is a school day, we're learning to get better. The top managers, the coaches, Arteta's, McKenna's at Ipswich, these amazing guys, they only have people in their clubs who want to get better, who want to improve. And you see that with the massive commitment of these players on the pitch, the Paris Saint-Germain and the Arsenal. You look at the commitment that these players at the top level are creating now, and it needs a special people behind them and special places where they come together and make it, and that's what St George's Park is.
And that's what you've done there, is what you've created an environment, and you will know that you have to create a vision, because people now talk about the England team being a team. Everybody goes on about the golden generation, etc., but they were individuals. Yet this, our current England teams, or our last couple of England teams, have been very much, they are seen as team players, and not just, he plays with Arsenal, he plays with Man U, etc. And that the teams win, team sports, not individuals.
And I think that is so wise, would you say? I mean, Gareth Southgate, I think, deserves the credit, because he was the one who really changed it. And I can remember, being at St George's Park when teams would come, to training, and they would sit in their club cliques, and they wouldn't mix together or anything. I mean, not really. And now there's a real fellowship and a real camaraderie, and one for all for one kind of approach to it. And I think Gareth deserves, obviously many people have just watched or watching Dear England, but he really does deserve great credit for the way that he changed the whole culture, really. And now Thomas Tuchel, who's a man of great wisdom and acuity, he's really a brilliant guy. He's now hopefully he is hopefully taking it on, and he and Anthony Barry and his wonderful group of backroom staff and so on, let's hope that that's all part of their elbow.
Indeed.
I think they fly today.
Yeah, they do. We're going to run out of time, unfortunately. The book is called Man on a Mission. You can order it via our TRE bookstore. It's by David Sheepshanks. David, we're going to crash the news, but it's been absolutely wonderful to speak to you this morning.
Loved it. Thank you so much, Giles. Who's your club?
Chelsea, but we can't have everything, can you? There you go. David, thank you so much for your time today.
All the best. Have a great day.